let's boil it down to, from based on all of your research on Limitless and Wonder Hell, her two best-selling books, and now with her PhD going after rigor. What would you say the top 3 tips are for leaders right now?
Number 1, your people are not inspired by the same thing that inspires you. Number 2, they are not going to tell you what inspires them unless they think it's a safe space to have that conversation. And number 3, you need to listen more than you talk. The closer you get to the head of the table, the more you're expected to have the answers, but the answers lie in the questions that you ask.
Welcome to the Seismic Shift podcast, where we explore the seismic shifts that are shaking up the way that you work and the way that you live. Y'all, I am so excited to have LGO in the house. Laura Gassner Otting. She is a freaking badass, and I am so thrilled that we're able to bring her to life. And she's got these incredible, based on research, these incredible ideas on why doesn't success feel so good. She has 2 best-selling books, Limitless, Wonder Hell, and we are going to go deep into success today. Welcome, Laura.
I am so excited to be here, Michelle. I'm thrilled.
So Laura and I had one of the best meals of my life. Can we just begin with that?
That meal ruined me for all other meals. I'm done. I've got 3 Michelin stars in London with Marshall Goldsmith. I mean, how could it get any better? I thought it was the most amazing meal ever. And then the dessert wine came. I mean, it was like, it just kept getting better and better and better.
I mean, I have tears in my eyes. That evening was, so let's bring the listeners into the last time Laura and I were together. And I already knew she was a badass, and I've seen her work. And then to experience a 3-4 hour meal together, I knew that she had to be on this podcast, which we're so thrilled is now a top 10% global podcast. People are recognizing the need to figure out these seismic shifts that are shaking up the way that we work and the way that we live. So rewind a little bit. In November, Marshall Goldsmith is the co-author of my new book, The Seismic Shift in You, and we were in London for the Thinkers 50 Awards. And this particular day, it was the day after everything. I was supposed to be flying home, but I couldn't get a nonstop. So I said, I'll stay one more day. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll figure it out. And you and I and Marshall and Scott Osman and Tasha Urich and Marshall Goldsmith end up having, as Laura described beautifully, one of the best meals of our life with some of the best conversations about leadership. So if you think about success, those people in that room that night, that restaurant, right? We all study leadership, and we all have worked with people at the highest levels. How lucky are we? At the highest levels. Why doesn't success feel so good? And I want to read to you all one of the best Laura quotes, and she's got a lot of them. This quote's incredible. We can't be insatiably hungry, speaking of the best meal of our lives, we can't be insatiably hungry for other people's goals. Let's go deep on that.
Yeah, let's get right into it, because every seismic shift that I've personally ever had in my own career and my own life was driven by that realization that the goals that I was pursuing in that moment weren't my goals. They might have been my goals at one point. They might not have been my goals at any point. But at the moment of that realization, I knew that I just couldn't keep running towards a thing that I didn't really care about deep in my soul anymore. And this all comes from a background of 20 years in executive search, placing people at the highest positions in the most important organizations in our world. And my job as an executive recruiter was to call the most successful people and to recruit them away on behalf of my clients. So it's a kind of a hard job, right? Like, you call the most successful people who are absolutely killing it. And then you say, hey, by the way, can I turn your life upside down and recruit you to this other position? And of course, they're going to be like, who are you? What is this search firm? What's the position? Why are you calling me? I'm so successful. But Michelle, they didn't. Every single one of them was super successful, which is why I called them, but they weren't very happy. So they all called me back. And I became fascinated with this question of, why does success not feel as good as it should? Why do we get to the highest levels? Why do we fill all of the boxes only to turn around and say, if all the boxes are full, why do I still feel empty? And at the end of the day, what it comes down to is that we're all given this path by a professor, for me, it was a fourth grade teacher, by a parent, by a Kardashian, right? By like somebody in the world who says, this is what success looks like. And we go, okay. And then we start running towards it, but we don't stop to ask ourselves, is this what success looks like for me?
Gosh, that's beautiful. So many people, as we're really thinking about 2026 and our goals and what success looks like and what do we want to accomplish. And I'm advocating that we need to do a whole shift, major shift in the workplace and personally from what to who, because just going after the what is not bringing us that satisfaction and contentment that we had all hoped it would bring, right? I'm advocating we need to go after more of the who do I get to work with, right? And also really knowing yourself. The most important who is you. And that goes to what you're saying. So a lot of this is social comparison. So we're thinking, you and I have launched we've written 2 books. You have Limitless and Wonder Hell.
Yes.
Uh-huh. And both of yours are bestsellers. And you can relate to this is when I was looking at writing this book with Marshall, I was gauging success on, well, he's a #1, a New York Times bestselling author. So my book has to be too. And when it didn't reach it, I thought, oh man, but then that wasn't my goal. That was just, I was looking around going, what does everybody else want to do? What does success mean to everybody else? And then I get bummed, but that was never my goal. Like, I'm good, girl. It was #1 on Amazon. I'm good, right? But I had to do recalibration in my mind of what felt good to me because comparing myself to everybody else didn't feel good.
Well, and it's absolutely true. Like, take book publishing for an example. I have a very good friend who is an author and a speaker, just like you and I, and he's tried to go after the New York Times. He's tried to go after the Wall Street Journal, and he wasn't successful. But I'll tell you what, he makes $1 million a year speaking every year. And he's hyper successful speaking. And why is he so successful? Because instead of making sure that everybody has a copy of his book, he said, who are the 50 CEOs who need to read my book? And if they've read my book, they'll bring me in and pay me $30, $40, $50,000 to give a keynote. And so he sold 0 books, he's given away 50 books, and he makes $1 million a year speaking. That's very different than like being on Oprah and, on Oprah's list and 1 million people reading your book, but like not actually making the kind of change you want to make in the world. So everybody has a different way that they size up success. And, look, when I was in recruiting, we used to listen for 8 motivating factors. Any of these factors will encourage anybody at any time to think about taking on a new job. So there are things like, am I inspired by the leader? What's the mission of the organization? How prestigious will it look on my resume? How broad is the impact? How deep are the skills that I'm going to learn? Where is the job located? What's my commute going to be like, right? These are the kinds of things people care about. And of course, people care about money. So when I was recruiting, I would listen for if I heard 1 or 2 of them, I knew I'd get the person on the call again. I'd be able to have a second interview. If I heard 3 or 4, I was sure if they were qualified, I can get them in front of my client. If I heard 5 or 6, I was like, the fish is in the boat. I'm ready to go out and hook the next big whale, right? Like I would listen for these things, and I was able to build these big, beautiful, diverse candidate pools that would start to fall apart. Weeks and months as the search went on, they would fall apart because the candidates were interested, but they weren't invested. And because I looked at this checklist, what are these 8 motivating factors that make a good job good? But I never stopped to ask, what makes a good job good for this particular candidate? So this particular candidate might be an empty nester and they don't need any control at all in their work. They want to just fulfill this purpose that they have this one last, big career in them. They may be somebody who's young, who's got little babies and maybe aging parents, and they care deeply about control. So maybe they're willing to give up some of the purpose and the calling and the mission driven at this point in their lives. All to say, everybody at every age and at every stage has a different way to describe what success looks like. But what happens is that when we're kids, somebody says, pick a major, pick a job, pick a career, pick a trade, pick a college. And we go, okay. And then we do. For me, I had a 4th grade teacher, as I mentioned, who said, Laura, you're a pretty argumentative young woman. You'd make a good lawyer. Now, Michelle, you won't be surprised to find out the first thing I did was tell her she was wrong, because of course I was argumentative. But then in my mind, I was like, that sounds like a real good thing to do. And at the time, LA Law and Ally McBeal, and I'm like, sexy lady lawyers everywhere. And I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. Awesome. And then I found myself in law school where on the very first day I looked around and I was like, I've made a big mistake. Like, I don't want to be here. I don't like what I'm studying. This isn't interesting to me. And so for me, my first big seismic shift was when I did what a lot of young women do when they're kind of miserable. I dated the world's worst boyfriend. But that world's worst boyfriend, I joke around, had exquisite taste in precisely two things. The first being obviously girlfriends, and the second being unknown presidential hopefuls from tiny southern states. And he was like, I'm going to give you a ride home from school today because it's raining, but I want to stop at this guy's office. He's running for president. And I was like, Governor who? From where? Arkansas? Not a chance in hell. Turns out, Bill Clinton became president of the United States, and I started volunteering for him that day when I went to that campaign office because he talked about this idea of community service in exchange for college tuition. And I was like, mind blown. That makes so much sense. I want to do it. So he got to the White House. I got to the White House. I ended up creating with a team of people, the AmeriCorps community service program where people could do, community service in exchange for college tuition. And so when I decided I was going to drop out of law school to join this presidential campaign, I called my parents from like a basement, like payphone, like somewhere like where they couldn't track me down because they'd kill me. Right? Like I was so worried about disappointing my parents who were like, that's the path she's on. But it turns out that in every single moment in my life where I've made these big shifts, it's because I had that moment where I thought, well, this is everyone else's definition and everyone else's idea of what success should look like, but I'm actually not doing well. I mean, I was getting C's and D's in law school. Why? Because I wasn't able to be insatiably hungry for my parents' goal. You can only bring the very best of what you do to everything that you do when you bring the very, very best of who you are to everything you do. And we can't do that unless it's actually our goal. But the problem is when we make this decision, somebody says you should be a lawyer. You're like, okay, we don't even have frontal lobes that are fully formed. We're like 16, 17, 18 years old. So we make this decision that's going to affect the very rest of our lives before we literally have the capacity to make a good one. And then we never give ourselves the grace to say, what if I was wrong? Maybe I should do something different. Like maybe it's okay for me to totally change everything I do.
God, I
And
love
pretty
your
much most of the
story.
times it is.
I did not know that part of the boyfriend part of the story. I knew you had gotten into the White House and were a part of AmeriCorps, but I didn't know that beautiful detail.
That beautiful detail.
Beautiful detail, which is fantastic. So seriously, Laura, you are one of the most curious people I've ever met. So for our listeners, Laura has achieved the highest level of success, literally as a serial entrepreneur in every endeavor that she has pursued. And she decided, just for giggles, she was going to go back and get her PhD right now. The second to the last time I saw Laura was in DC at a women's conference. And in between the sessions, she had about 5 books and articles that she was highlighting almost under the table in her PhD program. So tell us why you decided to go back and get a PhD.
Yeah, so this is when, if you're listening, you should turn off the podcast because you're like, this woman's insane. I should not take advice from an insane person. The truth is I've always wanted to get a PhD. I've just, there's no real strategic or business reason to get it. Not to sound like a braggart, but it's not going to get me on any stages or any screens I'm not already on. It's not going to get me into rooms I'm not already in. But the truth of the matter is that as authors and as speakers, people listen to what we say and they make decisions based on the advice that we give them. And if we're standing on stage and we're telling people what to do with their work, with their lives, with their community, with their relationships, we better know what we're talking about. And I just have this huge bee in my bonnet about getting it right, that it is so important that we know what we're doing. And there are a lot of authors and speakers out there like me who are doing interesting work, but there's not a lot that are doing, like you, rigorous work. And the difference between interesting and rigorous for me is at this moment in my life where my parents are older, but they're healthy. So, I've got a little time there. My kids are in college or just after, but I don't have grandkids yet, right? So I've got a little time there. So I'm in the middle and I just happen to have this beautiful window of time where I can finally make that shift from interesting to rigorous, because if I'm going to stand on stage, and give people advice, I want to do it from the very center of my expertise. And I feel like the only way to really know if you get it right is to really know if you're getting it right. So I decided at this point in my life, why not?
It does make sense, particularly for where you are in your stage of your life. Like you said, with your kids out of the home, you've reached the pinnacles of success. You want to continue on your stages. You're getting booked on amazing stages. You're on the Today Show all the time, talking about your research on success, and you want to have some rigor behind it. I love that. And as an academic, it makes complete sense.
Yeah. And so, I mean, to be like a total super nerd, I went to computer sleepaway camp when I was 13 years old. So I am like, honestly, like I come by my nerdery very, it's pure. It's been there forever. When I launched Limitless, I put out an assessment online, and it's at limitlessassessment.com. It's 56 questions. It goes pretty deep. It takes like 15 to 20 minutes to take, but it goes pretty deep about all of the variables that I saw during those 20 years in executive search about what actually gave people both success and happiness. This idea that I call consonance, right? Where you're aligned, you're in flow, where everything you do matches everything you are. And I put the assessment out. I launched the book, as you mentioned, on the Today Show, on Good Morning America. I was on 150 different podcasts, and I talked about this assessment everywhere. And so I put the assessment out, and then I realized, much to my chagrin, that it was way too complicated for me to actually understand how to interpret. And so I opened up the assessment about 3 months into the book launch, and I'd had like 2,500 people take it. And I was like, oh man, like I kind of thought I'd have like more, and I thought it was this big failure. Now that I'm in a doctorate program, I know that like that's a huge number, but I didn't realize it. So I closed up the assessment. I didn't look at it again. And then fast forward about a year, the pandemic happens. And frankly, all of these dude bros are on podcasts and they're talking about how people aren't engaged at work because they just need to be paid more. And I'm like, well, maybe, but that was one of 8 motivating factors. It wasn't the number one for everybody. And gosh, that sure doesn't comport with my 20 years of experience interviewing thousands of people, right? Like, I don't know if that's right. If only there was data that I could just point to. And I was complaining about this one night to my husband, who was the person I complain about most dude bros to. I'm like, you gotta fix your guys. And he was like, don't you have an assessment? So I was like, I actually do. So I went and I reopened the site that was hosting the assessment, and I suddenly had 6,000 responses. And then I was like, well, now what do I do? So, I make a living going to events, like flying to events to speak on stages. So it's the pandemic. There's no flights, there's no events, there's no stages. So what do? Remember, super nerd. So I teach myself how to do multi-level regression analysis in Excel because like, why not, right? Like, what else am I doing? And it was through the process of doing that I was like, there's actually a lot of data here and a lot of really interesting stuff. And I wish I really knew how to do this right. And so that kind of led me to this, maybe it's time to revisit that. I've always wanted to have a doctorate, because we saw really interesting things like, we know that bad leaders bleed out good people. Like That much is so obvious. Like, you don't need 6,000 responses. I now have 10,000 responses from all over the world, 113 different countries from now before, during, and after the pandemic. You don't need that to know that. But what I can also tell you is that when people say, I work for a good leader, right? Somebody who is well respected, somebody who gets results, somebody who's done the training. I work for a good leader. If we look only at those responses, and then we say to them, well, are you happy in your job? What we find is that people who self-identify as working for a good leader, but who say they have no relationship with that leader, actually report as having just as much likelihood to leave as somebody who's working for a bad leader, right? So this is why it is so important to understand what drives us at work, and for leaders to have these real conversations about what's actually behind the why for your who. Because if we don't have those conversations, then our people, they know you love them because they get the job done, they get the good results, you pay them money, you give them a promotion, great, but they don't think you see them. And if people don't feel seen, then they're going to leave.
You are my person.
I mean, when I saw that, I was like, oh, data. Yes. And I'll tell you this, when I get on stage, whether it's a sales kickoff, a leadership retreat, whether it's one of those boondoggle events for your highest performers, and I say this, no matter whether it's for multi-level marketing or for healthcare or for IT or AI, like doesn't matter. The audience gasps because every one of them goes, oh no, I thought it was enough that I was doing the work on myself. And I didn't realize that it was the relationship that actually made the difference. That I don't have to be perfect. I just have to show up in this present and authentic way to actually talk to my people.
Yes, that is exactly why I wrote this other book, The Seismic Shift in You. The seismic shift is all about connection, and we have to move from the what to the who. And we have to show our people that they matter. It's not just results. It's not just bottom line. They're not just cogs in the wheel. I care about you as a person.
And I'll tell you this, that when I did look at that number, money, 36.8% of people worldwide tell us that money is the most important factor that determines whether or not they're happy at work, right? So it's only about a third of people say that money is the most important factor. Now, if you look at Asia and the Middle East, that number goes up to about 45%. If you look at Canada, that number goes to 32%, right? So it's a little regional specific. In Europe, it's like 25%. Like there's other lifestyle things that matter. But for every single person, it's absolutely different. And understanding what drives our people, right? Everyone says, oh, well, the boomers just want to be relevant and Gen Xers want to matter. And these millennials, they want to get participation trophies, and Gen Z wants everything to be easy. And they want to be like the senior people at first. But I'll tell you this, that's not true. I mean, it is true for each of those individual generations, but those things are true for every generation. Everyone wants to feel relevant. Everyone wants to feel included. Everyone wants to feel like they matter. Everyone wants to feel like there's some opportunity for them to continue to grow and to change. Those are universal. So it's just actually not that hard, right? Inclusion is free. Inspiration is free. Helping people, giving people a pat on the back and being grateful is free. All those things are free, but money's not. And it turns out only a third of people want that. So yay. What do we do instead? Let's build relationships. That's why I loved your book, right? I love this idea that it's getting down to each of us individually showing up as we are. And that beautiful mosaic of what we can all become together is so much better than the individual.
Gosh, who was the speaker, Laura? It was at Thinkers 50. I was sitting right in front of you, and one of the top thinkers in the world talked about, it's Amy Edmondson and her new research. So Amy Edmondson, right, the god of psychological safety, who actually coined it with her work at Google, her new research is on, as a leader, you have got to shape this leadership journey to articulate it so everyone knows they're a part of it and that we're doing it together. And if you can do that as a leader, then you're golden. That's what she's now studying. And that's exactly what you're articulating.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at, Richard Boyatzis' work in intentional change theory, right? This is why I like getting a doctorate, because I couldn't have said that sentence 6 months ago. I didn't even know about it. Then I read, I read his work, and I was like, this is the science of change, literally the science of change behind why Wonder Hell actually makes sense. Like this phenomenon that I saw over 20 years of search. I'm like, oh, here's the science. Amazing. So if you look at his intentional change theory, one of the things that I thought was most interesting was that he cited a study where he said that the results of people who are taking the SAT, right? High school juniors who are taking the SAT are demonstrably different if they go in feeling confident that they're going to do well. And what affects most of their confidence is having that shared vision with the parent, with the teacher saying, I believe in you, I know you can do it, right? So this idea that this shared vision, I see you, I know where you're going, I believe in you, I know that we can get there together, right? Like I know you can do it, is such a huge part of whether or not we can be successful and whether or not we even think that success is for us.
Oh my gosh. So yes, yes, and yes. So if only 30% say that salary is most important, what is the factor that gets the most percentage of what's important for job satisfaction?
Inspiration.
So inspiration. What we're talking about.
Something like 98% of people, I don't remember the exact numbers. It's all on my website. People can come and look for my limitless leadership study there. 98%, I feel like 98.7% say that they want inspiration to be part of what gets them out of bed every single day.
Oh my gosh.
Now, here's the thing. Here's what people get wrong. People say, oh, well, fine, inspiration. Yeah, I'd love to be inspired, but I have to pay the bills. I'd love to be inspired, but I've got like kids to put through school. I'd love to be inspired, but I can't go work at a nonprofit right now. Turns out that every one of us defines inspiration differently. So like your calling may be curing cancer. Awesome. Go for it. Your calling may be making so much money that you can donate money to the nonprofit that's working to cure cancer and also buy yourself a Maserati and a beach house. That's awesome too. Go for it. Your calling may be working at a job that helps get you out of debt so that your kids can make different decisions than you had to make. That's awesome as well. So everybody's calling, everybody's purpose, everyone's inspiration is different, and we're all right.
So if 98% of us want to be inspired, I interpret that as they want to work for a leader who's inspirational, correct?
It could be working for a leader who's inspirational. It could be working for a cause that's inspirational. It could be being inspired by a future vision of yourself and what you want your life to look like. It could be inspired by the choices that you're creating for your kids. It's just people want to be part of something that feels like it's a bigger purpose than just I'm going to this work and I'm, selling some widgets and I'm going to make some money and I'm going to go home, right? People want, there's the job, there's the career, and then there's the calling, right? And I think that, and I say this as somebody who during those 20 years spent a majority of my time doing search for universities, foundations, advocacy organizations, socially responsible companies. So I've done a lot of the like mission driven search. And those people are as equally as unhappy, right? They're just, it's not like as soon as you put on the white hat, everything's great, right? And if you have the black hat on, you're evil. Like it is not literally black and white like that. So it is the leader's job to figure out how their people define inspiration. What does inspiration mean for this person at this moment, at this particular time in their life and in their career trajectory? So they may be inspired because they know that if they bring the best of what they do, they're going to get promoted. They're going to be on that career track. And that promotion might mean that they have to travel more and they love to travel. Perfect example. When I ran my search firm, I had somebody who worked for me who was a kick-ass senior associate, which meant that she was the second, like she was like in the second chair on every search. So the vice president would sell the work, would travel to the client, would interview the candidates, and she would be there doing the research, doing the telephone interviews, doing the reference checks, all telephone work. Now, she had just had a kid, and she was also kicking ass in the job, and her name is Carolyn. And I was like, Carolyn, you are amazing. I think you're great. You've done a great job as senior associate. We're going to promote you to vice president. And she said, no, thank you. And I was like, what are you talking about? Everybody says no, thank you to a promotion. You're going to make more money. Like, why would you say no, thank you? And she said, I just had a kid and I'm probably going to have another one in a couple of years. And I don't want to travel. I'd like to be home during these years. And once that kid is in the second kid, the not yet conceived kid is in preschool, I'd love to be a vice president then. And I'll tell you what, I sold that company 10 years ago. Carolyn is still at the company. And not only did she become a vice president, she's a senior vice president and she's kicking major ass. Because what she said, and what was such a huge lesson to me is I needed to see my people and understand not just like the job that they did, but why they were doing the job they did, who they were in the whole of their lives. Because allowing her to be an expert in that position, it didn't hold back the company. It certainly didn't hold back her. In fact, because she was an expert in that position and because she spent 6 years in a position where most people would spend 2 years, all the other senior associates who came through looked to her as a mentor. She grew our senior associate class. So we had stronger vice presidents because I allowed her to be in the role that actually filled all of her at that time.
And she had the courage to say what she needed. That is also very important. I feel like particularly for women in their childbearing years, and this could be a whole nother podcast, Laura.
Oh, yes.
It's hard to speak up. It was hard for me to speak up, to say, you know what? I don't know if I can keep doing this at this pace while I've got a young kid. It is really hard. So I applaud her, Carolyn, for having the courage to say, you know what? Thank you. Appreciate it. I know myself and I would like to be home for the next couple of years, but don't count me out. That's one of keep going.
Yeah. So I think the most important thing is that if you're listening to this and you're a leader and you're asking yourself, do I have a Carolyn on my staff and could she come talk to me? If you have any doubt in your mind that Carolyn can't come talk to you, Carolyn doesn't think she can talk to you, and you need to start having better conversations with your people.
Boom. And that's one of the chapters. Absolutely. So let's boil it down to, from based on all of your research on Limitless and Wonder Hell, her two best-selling books, and now with her PhD going after rigor. What would you say the top 3 tips are for leaders right now?
Number 1, your people are not inspired by the same thing that inspires you. Number 2, they are not going to tell you what inspires them unless they think it's a safe space to have that conversation. And number 3, you need to listen more than you talk. The closer you get to the head of the table, the more you're expected to have the answers, but the answers lie in the questions that you ask.
Boom! Was that a mic drop moment or what? Oh my gosh, I could talk all day with you, Laura. And every time I have a conversation with you, I totally get why you are so successful. You have this beautiful mind that is curious, you're engaging, you want to share. So besides wanting to acquire more information, and why not get a PhD right now? Why not start a new venture? Why not write another book? You then also want to share, and you want to help, and you want to help others figure out what inspires them and what is satisfying to them and what success looks like for them, not for anybody else.
Michelle, thank you so much for having me. I mean, I just have to say before we finish this podcast that I love your book, The Seismic Shift. It was so incredible. It is a gift to leaders. It is a gift to anybody who's trying to figure out where they are in their career. And it's something that I recommend to every person that I coach. So thank you for having me, but thank you for your book.
Laura, you're amazing. And I loved Wonder Hell and Limitless. And I loved you on this podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your precious time with us. I know how much you have going on in your life. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on the Seismic Shift. And before you go, can I ask one favor of you? Do you mind sharing today's episode with a leader you know? The power of this conversation is found in your using it and sharing it to create real connection in your life. Lastly, I'd like to thank Loyola University New Orleans for helping bring this content to life.